Alright, chapter 12, let's go, baby! Let's kick these out. Okay, so previously on Empress Theresa, yada yada, she kind of figured out, like, how to, I honestly, I wasn't really paying attention too much, but, like, she caused, like, a bunch of water to rise out from the earth, and they're saying, oh yeah, this is a step, you know, she's, like, creating energy and whatnot. Everybody was making a big deal about that. She had, like, a fun little picnic with, like, an older lady, like, and, yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, I just want to get on with business. Chapter 12. With the Prime Minister's help, Steve got a seat on the British Airlines flight to New York. He was driven by an army sedan to Heathrow Airport for the 11:17 p.m. flight. Television cameras followed his every move through the airport, and reporters asked for details of my plans. Steve smiled and didn't answer. I went to bed, still filled with anxiety. I'd gotten one of the water columns up. My plan called for 200 sets all over the world. Could Hal handle that much? If not, then kiss your butt goodbye. Still spelled goodbye wrong, this time without the hyphen. Kiss your butt goodbye, everybody. I had no backup plan. Sometime in the night, I heard Arthur pounding frantically on my bedroom door. Oh yeah, British accent. Madam! Yeah, why can't I do a British accent? Madam, awake! Awake! Awake, awake. He knocked again and repeated the message. I became alert. What is it? The North Koreans are bombing your water columns. The president wants to speak with you. Holy crap! I'm going to my workroom. I'm going to my workroom. Transfer the president there. Arthur raced to my third floor workroom, where I did my manipulation of Hal. A phone had many preset push buttons, one of which tied to into the house line. Arthur pushed. Are you there, Madam President? Yes. Madam Hartley is here. Madam Hartley is here. I arrived only 2 seconds after he connected to the president. I grabbed the phone. What the hell is going on? The North Koreans... I don't know who's talking. Yeah. The North Koreans... The president, I think. The North Koreans launched a missile at your water columns. We must assume it's nuclear. What will happen if it hits Hal? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, so she says, I don't know. And then she narrates, I don't know. What would happen if Hal suffered a direct hit by a nuclear weapon? Would he be destroyed? Would he have the wind knocked out of him for a while? But I mean, they're shooting missiles at water? Okay. The president added, You've heard what will happen if those water columns fall. Yeah, we lose 100 million people. Can you stop the missile? No. Can you get Hal out of there? Yeah. All I have to do is make him withdraw his support of the 2 columns. So why are they trying... I thought, like, the whole world at this point knew that she was trying to save everybody, so, like... Why the sudden attack? I mean, other than, like, I guess she has to go through some issues. What are they, skeptics? Like, what's the worst of... Whatever. Yeah, can you... Yeah, all I have to do is make him withdraw the support columns. Can you keep the water from falling if you get Hal out of there? No. We're running out of options, Theresa. How much time before the bomb hits? 4 minutes. 4 minutes to make an impossible decision. I looked around as if there were help somewhere. What do you think, Arthur? We can't afford to lose Hal, madam. The truth was simple. I could not allow Hal to be destroyed or damaged. But that meant condemning millions. My hand would be the instrument of mass destruction. Arthur says get out of here. Yeah, Arthur says get Hal out of there, I told the president. Then we lose 100 million people? Might beat the alternative. How would you know Hal would be harmed? I don't. It's a tough decision, Theresa. It was, and the president was leaving it up to me. She left it up to me, Arthur. Oh, so it's Arthur talking? I thought it was the president. I don't know who's ever talking. She leaves your room to think, madam. Think about what? 3 minutes, said the president. My eyes winced, and I started to cry. Try as I might, I couldn't think of anything. There were no more options. There was nothing to be done. It was hopeless. Panic was setting in. I was losing it. Of all the times for this to happen, I wailed. Steve's not here. Arthur said, They did not have to they did not have to unnerve you, madam. Ha! He pulled his shoulders back in the British manner and gave me a wide, confident smile. It worked. I calmed down and let my mind clear itself. Sorry, I haven't eaten if you can hear my stomach growling. 2 minutes. I looked at the chessboard used to control this task. If I removed the 6 chess pieces, the water columns would stop beginning from the bottom, while the water that had already risen into the air would continue to go up an altitude of 150 miles. But would Hal still be in the missile's path? I didn't know. After considering for a while, I rejected the idea. 1 minute. I thought, what if I laid the plywood board flat? Next page. Flat, and removed one of the metal street address numbers, making up the tag number. Then Hal might stop the task immediately. Maybe, or maybe not. Then if I replace the numeral, like 10 ellipses, question mark. I have an idea. If it doesn't work, we can say the butler did it. Give me a countdown. Okay. I handed the phone to Arthur, who understood he was to pass on the countdown. I raced on my desk to give a metal letter opener. Then I laid the plywood board flat and got ready to pry up the last numeral of the tag number glued to the board. The glue was weak. It would be easy to remove the numeral. 30 seconds, said Arthur. I was ready for the most desperate act of my life, whose success I couldn't guess. 25 seconds. Tell her to give me the individual seconds. 20. I don't know who's talking. Yeah, so it's Arthur. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, comma, ... I pried up the last numeral. Hal stopped pulling up the water columns. The rising water slowed down. In 10 seconds, it had decelerated its 200 miles an hour uprising to nothing and started to fall. 0 seconds, said Arthur. The bomb exploded. A cloud of steam, hundreds of yards wide, was visible to the Navy ships near the scene. I pulled the numeral back on the board. Hal started raising 6 new water columns. In a few seconds, they collided with the water falling down. The force Hal was using was much greater than needed, and the new water columns continued rising even into the collision with the falling water. There was no stopping them. The point of collision of the two opposing watery forces rose up at 200 miles per hour. The splash turned all of the falling water to the side at high speed. The falling water was spread out to a large area in the form of heavy rain. It looked like a liquid umbrella reaching down to the ocean. Spread out as drops in this way, the water did not have the calamitous impact that the water columns would have had. There were trillions of tiny drop impacts, rather than one big slam of massive quantity. "How's it going?" asked the president. I couldn't see what was happening. "I'm not sure. I understand what the Navy is saying. The water stopped rising, and now it's rising again." "All of it?" "No. Some is going up and coming down, and some is coming down. There is a big splash where they meet." "That's what I wanted. How long before the tsunami gets to Hawaii?" "Less than an hour. Call me." I hung up. There was nothing to do but wait. I simply stared into space. Arthur loyally sat nearby. It took a little less than 10 minutes for the last of the falling water to reach the ocean. Time had never passed so slowly. The phone rang 50 minutes later. It was President Stinson. "Good news, Theresa. No tsunami came to Hawaii. The rest of the Pacific must be safe. How did you do it?" Next page. I stopped the water columns for a moment and restarted them after the bomb. The collision broke the fall of the earlier water. It was a rainfall. "That's what the Navy is saying. Congratulations. It was brilliant." "Yeah, well, I'm taking a day off. This night killed me." I hung up. Arthur was proudly beaming. You're off the hook. Wait, no, it's just her talking. You're off the hook, Arthur, I smiled. There was one more task. I removed the 6 chess pieces from the board. Hal stopped raising the water columns from the bottom. The Navy got the strange experience of seeing the bottomless columns rising up in the air. In 45 minutes, the task would be closed down. North Korea could send all the bombs they wanted. I was still trying to fall back to sleep an hour later when Arthur knocked on the door again. He said Prime Minister Blair was coming to talk to me. What? Blair? What? Blair at 4 o'clock in the morning? I got dressed and went downstairs where Mr. and Mrs. Parker were waiting with Arthur in the living room. We said nothing until Blair arrived. The Prime Minister explained North Korea's insane action. The Prime Minister explained North Korea's insane action. I can't read, apparently. From the viewpoints of North Koreans, their actions made perfect sense. Destroying Hal and causing a tsunami of all the Pacific coasts would severely damage the economics of its enemies, South Korea, Japan, and the United States. It can be predicted that the United States would not destroy the North Korean people, it being a humanitarian nation. The United States might wash its hands of foreign involvement and abandon its long-time defense of South Korea. The North would be in a position to conquer the South. They also thought the bomb would destroy Hal and restore the wind. They would appear heroes. This would cancel out blame for the effects of the tsunami. I pondered this for a few moments. The hunger for gain destroyed common sense. Too bad I can't wash my hands of foreign involvement. I didn't want this job. We do understand your position. It's grossly unfair. Again, I don't know who's talking! I had blocked it out of my mind earlier, but now it hit me. I was planning on raising 1,000 water columns all over the world. It would put enough water in the air to cause rain. Now I can't do that. If somebody sent off 10 missiles at once, I couldn't keep up. A bomb might kill Hal, and the columns would send tsunami waves everywhere. We could lose 2 billion people. I was already starting to cry when the Prime Minister asked, "What will you do?" I'm thinking of Napoleon. There is nothing I can do. There's no other way to make rain. All that worrying for nothing. The idiots won't let me save them. With that, I really broke down. Mrs. Parker rushed over to hold me as I had a meltdown. She took me upstairs and counseled me until I calmed down. I slept a few hours and woke up, still miserable. The feeling of failure and all that meant weighed. The feeling of failure and all that meant weighed on me. Okay? I checked the tube. Prime Minister Blair had given a statement to the press hours earlier. Early this morning, I spoke with Mrs. Hartley about last night's incident. She was very upset. I suggest our main concern is Mrs. Hartley now. I urge the world's leaders to say nothing until we see what Mrs. Hartley does or doesn't do. President Stinson has assured me she will not speak of this matter. In other words, everybody was concerned of what I would do next. That's why Blair came to see me in the middle of the night. It was kind of amusing in a strange way to watch the media commentators nervously talk about the North Korean bomb and how I foiled it. They were very grim-faced and carefully avoided speculating about what I could do. That's what it actually said. Hal had not been destroyed. I still had the power. Don't piss me off. When Steve arrived in New York, he grabbed the next flight back to London. He got back to the Parker mansion. Nearly 20 hours after leaving, it was already evening. I was waiting with a glum face when he strutted into the room, very proud of himself. "I have a new plan," he said with obvious pride. "You'll really love this one." It took me 5 days to throw together a new plywood sheet with all the needed parameters of a new task. I started the first of 2 tasks. 2 hours before dawn, the British people heard a very faint rumbling sound, barely audible. It sounded like the movement of a large amount of earth. It didn't go away. The news channel jumped on the story. Seismologists said there was much ground vibration around the North Pole. It wasn't an earthquake. There were no waves in the bedrock radiating outward. Instead, there was some kind of disturbance in the bedrock around the pole. No effects had yet been seen on land. Blair sent Royal Air Force planes to the North Pole. A few hours went by. The Air Force arrived at the scene and sent back live video. The ice in a thin 150-mile wide circle surrounding the pole was being cracked and broken up by some submarine force. In time, the circle of disrupted ice became two concentric circles approximately 20 miles away from each other. The Americans also sent out their planes and the White House, and President Stinson watched the screen constantly. Early in the afternoon, something rose up from the fractured ice. It was a mound of rocks, broken up into enormous pieces larger than houses, some breaking up even as they rose. It soon became apparent that these mounds of rocks were rising up completely around the two concentric circles. Nobody could guess how many trillions of tons of rocks were rising up. No wonder there was a rumbling in the earth. I was pushing up the rock by using Hal as a bulldozer, as I once referred to him. Making Hal apply pressure at many points along the circles automatically broke the rock up into house-sized pieces because the pressure was applied to curvatures, not straight lines. Planes from several nations flew here and there and established that the concentric circles of rock mounds were not complete. They were made of curved sections, some 5 miles long, with 1 mile, next page, with 1 mile gaps between them. Soon it was noticed that the inner and outer curved rock mounds were placed so that the 1 mile gaps in one circle faced the center of the rock mounds in the other circle. A ship that wanted to sail to the North Pole would have to enter through a gap in the outer circle, turning 90 degrees to sail a couple miles between the circles, and found an inner circle gap to get to the pole. The curved rock mounds continued to rise until they reached a half-mile above the ocean. Commentators pointed out that the Arctic Ocean was only a half-mile deep, which made this piling up of rock easier for me to do than it would be in the 3-mile deep Atlantic. Then the process changed somewhat. The outer incomplete circle thickened outward, and the inner circle mounds thickened inwards. This required Hal's applying his forces from a greater distance. This fascinating process continued for 4 more hours until the rock mounds were half a mile above the water and 5 miles thick from inside to outside. The surface of the mounds were very rough, like granite stone levees, built to protect shorelines. Planes and helicopters could never land there. Then everything stopped. What were these rock mounds for? Everybody wondered. They're barriers to absorb tsunamis, said the PM to the press. Look how any wave that gets through the inner circle gaps will be absorbed by the outer circle. Theresa will raise water columns at the North Pole. He was right. It was clear to everyone. For once, they knew that I would do ahead of time. For once, they knew what I would do ahead of time. Everybody was relieved that I wasn't doing something dangerous, like going after the North Koreans. Steve found the butler. Arthur, call the Prime Minister and tell him to get everybody out of there. Anybody foolish enough to stay within 75 miles of the North Pole does so at his own risk. Theresa can't save their miserable necks. She's too busy playing nursemaid to fools. Very good, sir. The PM passed the word, and all the weather station scientists were evacuated. 2 days were required to do this. In the morning, when the last of the North Pole scientists were being flown out in ski planes, I went to work on a new phase of the project. Steve set up one of his chessboards with a tag number. I placed 4 chess pieces in the middle of the board and moved my hands along the borders of a sheet of plywood with the three-dimensional parameters associated with the chessboard tag numbers. Hal began raising 4 water columns, each 300 feet wide and rising 200 miles an hour. This event was immediately detected by the planes. It was quickly pointed out that 4 columns weren't enough to bring rain to the world. I was doing something else. Everybody had to wait. 5 hours went by. The water columns reached a height of 100,000 miles. Where did I get the 100? Of 1,000 miles. At this point, I removed the last digit of the tag number on the chessboard, as he had done in the North Korea bomb incident. Hal stopped his support of the water columns. The water columns fell. For the first few minutes... Next page. There was an enormous splash in the ocean as the water crashed down at ever-increasing speed. Huge waves spread out, but settled down as their impulses were translated into rapidly moving tsunami forces. As the highest parts of the water columns fell, their greater speed caused them to be broken up into mist, and then finally heated to steam, so that there were no longer a giant splashing at the ocean surface. About the time all the water had fallen, the first impulses reached the insides of the inner rock circle. The waves climbed high up the side of the inner rock mounds to nearly the top, but did not spill over. The waves settled back down to nearly nothing. The first impulses were bouncing back to counteract with and cancel out the newer impulses still radiating from the pole. In 18 minutes, it was all over. Everything was quiet. The experiment was a success. The rock circles had suffered no damage. They knew they could take a much harder hit. The world's anxiety about the Korean missiles fiasco dissipated. I had not declared war on North Korea. I had turned my attention to the North Pole. Steve's promise that when I got control of Hal, I'd do giant actions had been fulfilled. In only a few weeks, I had done 4 spectacular feats: the small water column near Gloucester, Massachusetts, the 6 larger columns in the Pacific, the North Pole Rock Mound Circle, and the 4 1,000-mile-high water columns. The world waited for my next move. Okay, that's the end of that set of chapters. I want to see if the next chapter is... Oh my gosh, the next chapter is, again, that is 4 chapters in a row that are only 10 pages long. I don't know if I'm going to do that one today. Probably not. I think 3 is going to be enough for now, maybe, but I don't know. I am just really happy that I can do this. So, as a recap, there's really nothing to recap. It's actually, trying to be a decent book for once, where she's, doing whatever. Granted, I kind of haven't been paying attention to see what all this is adding up to. I guess I'll just blame my ADD on that so that I can avoid, what's the term? Responsibility? Yeah, I can avoid responsibility that way, but she made water columns. She did a thing with the rocks in the North Pole and whatnot. There's a controversy with North Korea, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just really looking forward to all of this being done. Have a good one.